I'm always a little nervous when I start looking at a new gaming rig, because I've seen way too many cheap budget towers that look impressive on paper and then fall apart the first time you push them past a couple of titles. You end up with stuttering frames, constant driver headaches, and the feeling that you wasted your cash on a piece of plastic that can't keep up. That's why I spent a good chunk of time comparing the STORMCRAFT Sirius gaming desktop to a handful of lower-priced alternatives before I even thought about clicking Add to Cart. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The biggest question on my mind was simple: does this machine give me the performance I need for modern games without forcing me into a future-proof price tag that I can't justify? I also wanted to know whether the design and connectivity choices actually make my day-to-day gaming and work setup smoother, or if they're just eye candy. In the end, the answer turned out to be a mixed bag, but it leans towards smart buy for a specific group of users. First off, let's talk about the kind of experience you get when you fire this thing up for a typical 1080p or 1440p session. The combination of an Intel i5-14400F and an RTX 5060 Ti gives you enough horsepower to hit well over 60 frames per second in titles like Valorant, Apex Legends, and Cyberpunk 2077 on medium-high settings. That means you can actually enjoy competitive shooters without the dreaded input lag, and you can still push some of the more demanding open-world games at a respectable visual level. What's more, the 32GB of DDR5 RAM clocked at 6000 MHz eliminates the kind of frame time spikes you see on older, slower memory kits. In practice, I noticed smoother transitions when I switched between a fast-paced multiplayer match and a slower, story-driven segment in Horizon Forbidden West. The system didn't hiccup, and the loading screens were consistently under 10 seconds thanks to the 1TB NVMe SSD. Now, the real world isn't just about raw numbers. One of the strengths that shows up when you actually sit down at your desk is the tower's glass side panel and RGB-infused memory. It's not just about looking cool. The tempered glass gives you a quick visual cue if any component is overheating, and the RGB can be synced with other peripherals if you already have a lighting ecosystem. I found that useful during a weekend marathon when the GPU temperature nudged past 80°C. The subtle glow change reminded me to open the case for a quick dust-off before things got serious. That level of visual feedback is something you won't get from the generic matte boxes most budget rigs use. On the connectivity side, the Sirius packs a USB-C port right on the front, which is a nice surprise for anyone who uses a newer monitor or a docking station. Pair that with Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.2, and you have a system that can handle high-bandwidth wireless gaming without needing to run a separate Ethernet cable. In my house, the Wi-Fi 6E connection gave me a stable 200 megabits per second link to the router, which meant no lag spikes in Fortnite even when my roommate was streaming Netflix on a different device. The downside? The rear panel is a bit cramped, and you have to be careful when you plug in a bunch of USB devices at once because the layout forces a few to share a hub, which can cause occasional power dips if you're using a lot of high-draw peripherals. Who should consider buying the STORMCRAFT Sirius? If you're a serious gamer who also does a bit of content creation like editing YouTube videos or streaming on Twitch, this machine hits a sweet spot. The 32GB of RAM and the fast SSD keep editing software responsive, and the RTX 5060 Ti handles real-time encoding without bogging down the game itself. It also makes sense for anyone who wants a ready-to-play PC that doesn't require a separate graphics card purchase. The system arrives fully assembled, so you skip the build-your-own learning curve. For a small office that needs a powerful workstation for occasional CAD work or 3D rendering, the GPU and CPU combo is more than adequate, and the Wi-Fi 6E will keep the network traffic smooth. On the flip side, the Sirius isn't the best fit for a few scenarios. If you're hunting for a pure 4K gaming experience with ultra-high settings, the RTX 5060 Ti will eventually feel like a bottleneck, especially in titles that push ray tracing to its limits. In that case, you'd be better off waiting for a model that ships with an RTX 4070 or higher, even if it means spending a bit more. Also, the sleek glass design, while attractive, can be a liability in a dust-prone environment. I live in a city with a lot of construction nearby, and I had to schedule a cleaning session every couple of weeks just to keep the interior from collecting grime. If you're looking for a low-maintenance, purely functional box that you can shove into a closet, a more utilitarian chassis would serve you better. Another practical consideration is upgradability. The